The invitation sat on my kitchen counter, unopened for 3 days. A simple cream envelope with elegant gold lettering addressed to me. Eleanor Thompson. I knew what was inside. Another excuse, wrapped in flowery words. I took a deep breath and slid my finger under the seal, pulling out a crisp card. Mom, so sorry we can't make it for your actual birthday. Work is crazy right now. I didn't bother reading the rest. I already knew the ending, promises to visit soon and make it up to me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I set the card down next to the other two, forming a neat row of disappointments from each of my children. James, Rebecca, and Daniel, all too busy for their mother's 80th birthday. I gazed out the kitchen window at the garden I'd tended for 45 years, watching a pair of cardinals flit between the maple branches. The female followed wherever the male led, loyal and constant. I used to think that's what family meant too, showing up no matter what. What my children didn't know was that I'd stopped waiting for them months ago. And they certainly had no idea about the plane ticket tucked into my bedside drawer, or the reservation at Golden Horizons Resort, or the fact that in 4 days, I'd be celebrating my birthday exactly as I pleased, without any of them. My alarm chimed at 6:30 a.m., the same time I'd risen every day since retiring from teaching 15 years ago. Old habits die hard, especially when you've spent 30 years waking up to teach first graders. I slipped on my robe and shuffled to the kitchen, my arthritic knees already protesting the day's movement. The house was silent, of course. It had been since Henry passed away 8 years ago. Before that, the quiet had been unbearable. Now, it was just a fact of my life. Like the gray streaks in my hair or the family photos on the mantel that hadn't been updated in years. I placed the kettle on the stove and measured loose tea leaves into my favorite porcelain pot, a retirement gift from my colleagues at Oak Ridge Elementary. While waiting for the water to boil, I unfolded the newspaper and skimmed the headlines. Nothing good, as usual. The phone rang, startling me. I glanced at the clock, 7:15 a.m., too early for telemarketers. Hello? I answered, a flutter of hope in my chest. Mom, it's Rebecca. Her voice was rushed, the sound of traffic in the background. I'm heading into an early showing, but I wanted to catch you before you started your day. I've been up for almost an hour, dear, I said, smiling despite myself. Rebecca was always running late, even as a child. Of course you have, she laughed. Listen, about your birthday next week. My smile faded. I knew what was coming. Tyler has this huge presentation at business school the day after, and James really needs to be there for moral support. And I just got the listing for the Palmer's estate. You know how long I've been trying to get my foot in that door. Daniel has that conference in Seattle. I listened quietly, stirring honey into my tea as she continued. We've been thinking maybe we could do something the weekend after? Maybe brunch at that place you like in town? I know it's not the same as celebrating on the actual day, but it's fine, Becky, I said, using her childhood nickname, knowing it would soften whatever disappointment might have crept into my voice. 80 is just a number. Oh, Mom, you're the best. I knew you'd understand. The relief in her voice was palpable. We'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe we can even do something bigger, like a weekend trip later this summer? That sounds lovely, I replied, though we both knew it would never happen. Last year's promised special Christmas visit had been reduced to a rush dinner on December 27th, with everyone checking their watches by dessert. After we hung up, I carried my tea to the sunroom at the back of the house. The morning light streamed through the windows, warming the collection of plants I'd nurtured over the years. Unlike children, plants thrived with simple, consistent care. I reached for my leather-bound journal and opened to a fresh page. For years, I'd documented the small moments of my life. The first crocus of spring, a particularly good batch of strawberry jam, kind words from a former student spotted at the grocery store. These past few months, though, my entries had taken on a different tone. March 15th, called James about visiting. His secretary said he was in meetings all day. He returned my call at 9 p.m., sounding tired. Asked about seeing the grandkids before summer. It's a crazy time right now, Mom. April 2nd. Daniel canceled our lunch plans. Third time this year. Grant deadline, he said. Sent flowers the next day. April 28th. Rebecca forgot our weekly call. When I called her, she was surprised it was Sunday already. I'd started noticing a pattern years ago, but had made excuses for them. They were building careers, raising families, living the lives I'd always wanted for them. But something shifted in me when I turned 79. Perhaps it was the stark reminder of my own mortality, or maybe just the accumulation of too many broken promises. Whatever the cause, I'd made a decision. If they couldn't make time for me, I would make time for myself. My 80th birthday would mark the beginning of something new. Not an ending, not a sad milestone to be endured, but a beginning. I glanced at the calendar hanging beside my desk, where I'd circled June 17th in red marker. 4 days away. I turned to a fresh page in my journal and wrote, 80 years old, time to start living for me. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I closed the journal and made my way to the front door, where Martha Jenkins stood with a tote bag and a wide smile. Happy almost birthday week, she announced, brushing past me into the house. Martha and I had been friends since 7th grade. 66 years of friendship that had survived marriages, children, career changes, and now widowhood. While my children's visits grew increasingly rare, Martha stopped by 3 times a week, like clockwork. I brought muffins, she said, heading straight for the kitchen. And I want to hear all about your plans. Have the kids called yet? I sighed, following her. Rebecca called this morning. Same story, different excuses. Martha, set the bag on the counter with more force than necessary. Those children of yours. I don't understand it, Ellie. My David calls twice a week and he lives in Alaska. They're busy, I said automatically, the familiar defense springing to my lips. Martha fixed me with a stern look. Too busy for their mother's 80th birthday? The mother who never missed a single soccer game or dance recital? The mother who worked 2 jobs after Henry's first heart attack to keep them all in college? She shook her head. No one is that busy. She was right, of course. I knew it, too. But acknowledging the truth, that my children simply didn't prioritize me, was a wound I'd been trying not to reopen. Well, Martha continued, pulling muffins from her bag, their loss is our gain. Is everything set for Thursday? My mood lifted instantly. All set. I called the resort yesterday to confirm. The car service will pick us up at 9 a.m. And Bill is meeting us there? She asked with a sly smile. I felt warmth crawl up my neck. He's driving down separately. He has some bird watching he wants to do on the way. Bird watching, Martha scoffed. That man is smitten with you, Ellie. Has been since the community center dance in February. We're friends, I insisted. Though the thought of seeing Bill, with his kind eyes and stories from his days as a country doctor, sent a pleasant flutter through my chest. If you say so, Martha said, clearly unconvinced. Now, did you pick up that blue dress we saw at Nordstrom's? The one that matched your eyes? I nodded. And a new swimsuit, I added, feeling a bit daring. Martha whooped with delight. Look at you, Eleanor Thompson, ready for her second act. We spent the morning finalizing details for the trip. 3 days at Golden Horizons Resort, a beautiful property on the coast that I'd read about for years but never visited. Martha had insisted we splurge on the ocean view suites. "What's the point of saving all these years if not for this?" she'd said when I hesitated over the cost. She was right. What was I saving for? To leave more to children who couldn't spare, a day to celebrate with their mother? The thought solidified my resolve. After Martha left, I retrieved my phone and checked my messages. Nothing from James or Daniel. I hadn't really expected there to be. I scrolled through to my photos, finding one from 2 Christmases ago, the last time all 3 children and their families had managed to be in the same place. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We were arranged on my living room sofa, grandchildren in front, everyone smiling. A perfect family portrait. Except I remembered that day clearly. James had arrived 3 hours late, furious about holiday traffic. Rebecca and Daniel had bickered about politics over dinner. The grandchildren had been glued to their phones, barely speaking to me or each other. We'd taken the photo in a brief moment of ceasefire, and then James had announced they needed to leave to beat the traffic back. I set the phone down. My decision, reaffirmed. No more waiting for them to have time for me. No more arranging my life around brief visits that left me feeling lonelier than before. The afternoon stretched before me, quiet and open. I retrieved the resort brochure from my bedside drawer and traced my finger over the glossy images of sparkling pools and sunset beach walks. For decades, I'd put everyone else first, my husband, my children, my students. Now, finally, it was my turn. I opened my closet and pulled out the new blue dress Martha had mentioned, laying it on the bed. Beside it, I placed the swimsuit I'd purchased, a modest but flattering one-piece in deep teal. Then my new sandals, a sun hat, and the novel I'd been saving for the trip. None of these items fit the image my children had of me. Practical. Predictable Eleanor Thompson in her sensible shoes and cardigan sweaters. The mother who was always there, waiting for their calls, grateful for whatever scraps of time they could spare. They'd be shocked to see me now, I thought, with a small smile. But they wouldn't see me. They'd call on my birthday, of course. When I didn't answer, they'd leave messages full of well wishes and promises to celebrate soon. They might even feel a twinge of guilt as they went about their busy days. By then, I'd be sipping a mimosa on a terrace overlooking the ocean, surrounded by people who had chosen to be there. That evening, I made myself a proper dinner. Roast chicken with herbs from my garden, baby potatoes, and glazed carrots. I set the table with my good china and poured a glass of white wine. There was no special occasion. I simply deserved it. As I ate, I considered whether to tell my children about my plans. A part of me wanted to see their reactions, to have them know I wasn't sitting at home alone on my birthday, waiting for their calls. But a deeper, wiser part knew that doing so would only invite them to rain on my parade with concerns about the cost, the travel, my age. "You shouldn't be driving so far at your age, Mom," James would say, though I'd arranged for a car service specifically to avoid that argument. "Is that resort senior-friendly? What if you fall?" Rebecca would fret, ignoring the fact that I still walked 3 miles every morning and took yoga twice a week. "Wouldn't it be better to save that money for something practical?" Daniel would suggest, ever the pragmatic professor. No, I decided, clearing my plate. This was my celebration, my choice. They'd forfeited their right to input when they'd decided my 80th birthday wasn't worth rearranging their schedules for. I washed the dishes and dried them carefully, returning each to its proper place. Order had always comforted me, especially after Henry died and the house became so quiet. I checked the locks, turned off the lights, and prepared for bed with the same routine I'd followed for years. But as I slipped between the cool sheets, my thoughts were far from routine. In 4 days, I would turn 80. But rather than an ending, it felt like a beginning. My first steps into a life where I put myself first. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. I drifted to sleep with visions of ocean waves and possibilities, dreaming of the woman I might yet become. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day. I went about my usual routine, stretching exercises, a light breakfast, watering the garden. But underneath the familiar rhythms hummed an electric current of anticipation. 3 days until my new life began. The phone rang as I was deadheading the roses. James, according to the caller ID. I wiped my hands on my gardening apron and answered. Mom, got a minute? He sounded harried, as always. For you, always, I replied, settling onto the garden bench. Listen, about your birthday. He began, and I braced myself. Tyler's presentation got moved up. It's now on your actual birthday. I see, I said quietly. I really need to be there for him, Mom. You understand, right? Family first and all that. The irony seemed lost on him. Rebecca mentioned maybe doing something the weekend after. We could all come for Sunday brunch. I remained silent, watching a butterfly dance from bloom to bloom. Mom, you there? I'm here, James. I paused, considering my words carefully. You do what you need to do. Tyler should have his father's support. Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd get it. The relief in his voice was palpable. I'll call you on your birthday, I promise. Maybe we can FaceTime so you can see the kids. That would be nice, I said, though we both knew it probably wouldn't happen. Last year's birthday call had been a rush 2 minutes from his car, the sound cutting in and out as he drove between meetings. After we hung up, I sat in the garden a while longer, letting the sun warm my face. A younger version of myself would have been hurt, maybe even cried. But at almost 80, I found I didn't have tears to spare for those who wouldn't make time for me. Instead, I felt a curious lightness. Every canceled plan, every broken promise from my children only reinforced that I was making the right decision. It was time to stop waiting for them to make me a priority and start prioritizing myself. I returned to my gardening with renewed purpose, humming as I worked. The roses didn't care that I was turning 80. They bloomed for me just the same. That afternoon, I drove to the local bookstore to pick up a few more novels for my trip. The young woman at the register, Lily, had been helping me find books for years. Her face lit up when I approached. Mrs. Thompson, just in time. The new Elizabeth Strout came in yesterday. I set one aside for you. You're an angel, I told her, genuinely touched. This girl who made minimum wage remembered my reading. Preferences better than my own children remembered my birthday. Any special plans for the weekend? She asked as she rang up my purchases. I hesitated, then decided there was no harm in sharing with someone who wasn't family. Actually, I'm celebrating my 80th birthday at Golden Horizons Resort on the coast. Her eyes widened. Wow, that place is supposed to be amazing. My aunt went there last year and couldn't stop talking about it. I've wanted to go for years, I admitted. Finally decided to treat myself. Good for you. She handed me my bag of books. My grandma always says if you want something done right, do it yourself. Guess that applies to birthdays too, huh? I laughed. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She is, Lily agreed. She's taking a painting class at 85. Says she's tired of waiting for the right time to start living her dreams. Her words stayed with me as I drove home, settling into my heart like a truth I'd always known, but somehow forgotten. The right time to start living my dreams wasn't after my children decided I was worth making time for. It was now, while I still had the health and means to enjoy it. That evening, Daniel called. Unlike his siblings, he at least sounded genuinely regretful. I tried to get out of this conference, Mom, I really did. But I'm presenting a paper, and it's been on the books for months. It's all right, Daniel, I said, meaning it. There will be other birthdays. Though whether he'd be available for those was another question entirely. I sent a package, he offered. Should arrive tomorrow or the next day. That's thoughtful of you. It's not the same as being there, I know. He paused. Maybe I could come by the weekend before? Just for the afternoon? I thought of my packed suitcase, the ticket confirmation, the plans already in motion. That's very sweet, but I've actually made other arrangements for that weekend. Senior center event, I added, the small lie slipping out easily. Oh. He sounded surprised, perhaps even a little hurt. Well, that's good. I'm glad you won't be alone. I'm never really alone, Daniel, I said softly. I have a full life here. It was true, though not in the way he might imagine. My life was full of my own choices now, not the leftovers of my children's busy schedules. After we said goodbye, I found myself wandering through the house, looking at it with fresh eyes. Everywhere were reminders of the family I'd raised, photographs, artwork from when they were small, souvenirs from family vacations long past. The weight of memories, both sweet and bittersweet. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I being selfish? Punishing my children for having busy lives of their own? But no. This wasn't about punishment or spite. This was about finally recognizing that I deserved to be more than an afterthought in my own life. I picked up a framed photo from the hall table. Me with all 3 children at James's college graduation. We were beaming, arms around each other, the future bright and full of promise. I traced their young faces with my finger. I love you all, I whispered to the empty room. But it's my turn now. The morning of June 16th, one day before my birthday, I woke with the sunrise. Golden light spilled across my bedroom floor as I sat up and stretched, feeling each of my 79 years in my bones. Tomorrow, I'd be 80. The thought no longer filled me with dread, but with a quiet expectation. I padded downstairs in my slippers, put the kettle on, and opened the back door to let in the fresh morning air. The scent of lilacs drifted in from the garden, their late blooms a gift from an unusually cool spring. I'd always loved how nature operated on its own timeline, indifferent to human schedules and expectations. The kettle whistled, and I prepared my morning tea, carrying it out to the garden where dewdrops still clung to the grass. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, but I let it ring. This moment was mine. Later, I found 3 missed calls, 2 from Rebecca and 1 from my grandson Tyler. I called Rebecca back first. "Mom, finally!" she exclaimed when she answered. "I've been trying to reach you all morning." I was in the garden, I said simply. "What's up?" "We're trying to coordinate for next weekend. James says he can only do Sunday brunch, not Saturday, and Daniel has office hours until noon on Sunday, so we're thinking maybe a late lunch instead. Around 2? I took a deep breath. They were planning my belated birthday celebration without once asking what I might prefer. "Actually," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded, "I haven't decided if I'll be available next weekend." "What do you mean?" Rebecca sounded genuinely confused. "We're all rearranging our schedules for this, Mom." The irony hit me like a physical blow. "Yes, for next weekend, not for my actual birthday." A beat of silence. "Mom, we've been through this. You know how crazy work is right now, and Tyler's presentation." "I understand," I interrupted gently. "Everyone has priorities. Mine have changed too." "What's that supposed to mean?" Her voice had taken on that familiar edge, the tone she used when her children were being difficult. "It means I'm considering other plans for next weekend. I'll let you know." I changed the subject before she could respond. "Did Tyler need something? He called earlier." "Oh," she said, momentarily derailed. "He wanted to know if you'd proofread his presentation. English was never his strong suit, and you know how good you are with that stuff." I closed my eyes briefly. My grandson hadn't called about my birthday or to check in on his grandmother. He'd called because he needed something. I'm afraid I won't have time today, I said. I have quite a bit to do before tomorrow. Before tomorrow? What's happening tomorrow? My birthday, Rebecca. Right, of course, but what? I need to go, dear. I'll call Tyler later to explain. I ended the call before she could press further. The package from Daniel arrived just after noon, a beautifully wrapped box with a card attached. I opened it carefully, saving the ribbon as I always did. Inside was a cashmere sweater in soft lavender, my favorite color. The card read, "Happy 80th, Mom. Wish I could be there to celebrate the amazing woman who made me who I am. All my love, Daniel." Tears pricked my eyes, the first I'd shed in days. Daniel had always been the most thoughtful of my children, even if his academic career kept him just as busy as his siblings. I ran my fingers over the soft fabric, appreciating the gift while still feeling the hollow ache of his absence. Martha arrived at 2:00, carrying several shopping bags, and wearing an expression of fierce determination. "Final preparations," she announced, marching past me into the kitchen. "We leave tomorrow at 9 sharp. Are you packed?" "Almost," I said, following her. "Just a few things left to gather." "Good." She began unpacking her bags, a new wide-brimmed sun hat, sunscreen, a bottle of champagne, and various toiletries. "Can't have you getting sunburned on your birthday trip. And we'll need this." She held up the champagne. "For tomorrow morning before we leave, starting the celebrations properly." I smiled at her enthusiasm. "You think of everything. Someone has to," she said with a sniff. "Now, has there been any more drama from the offspring?" I told her about the morning's calls and the gift from Daniel. She listened, nodding occasionally, her lips pressed into a thin line. "At least he remembered your favorite color," she conceded. "But honestly, Ellie, after all these years of you dropping everything whenever they called, you'd think they could manage one day." "They're just busy," I said automatically, the familiar defense rising to my lips. Martha fixed me with a stern look. "Stop making excuses for them. You deserve better, and deep down, you know it." I sighed, sinking into a kitchen chair. "I do know it. That's why I'm doing this. But sometimes I wonder if I'm being too harsh. They're not bad people, Martha. They're just self-absorbed," she supplied. "Entitled? Taking you for granted?" "They're the way we raised them to be," I said quietly. "Ambitious, focused on their careers and families." "Bull," Martha said bluntly. "My David works 60 hours a week as a wildlife biologist in the Alaskan wilderness and still calls me twice a week. Being busy is a choice, Ellie. So is being present for the people you love." Her words struck a chord. I thought of all the baseball games I'd attended despite grading papers until midnight afterward. The dance recitals I'd never missed, even when it meant driving 2 hours each way after a full day of teaching. The college visits I'd arranged around my limited vacation days. I'd always found a way to be there for my children. Always. "You're right," I admitted, a weight lifting as I spoke the words aloud. "I deserve more than leftover time and belated celebrations." "Damn straight you do," Martha said, her expression softening. "That's my girl." We spent the afternoon finalizing details for the trip. Martha had upgraded our car service to a luxury sedan. We're not taking some generic airport shuttle at our age, and confirmed our dinner reservations at the resort's oceanfront restaurant for the following evening. I called Bill to make sure he was still planning to meet us there. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he said, his warm voice sending a pleasant flutter through me. "I've got a birthday surprise for you, Eleanor." "You didn't need to do that." I protested. "I wanted to," he replied simply. "See you tomorrow." After Martha left, I spent the evening packing the last of my things and preparing the house for my absence. I watered all the plants, stopped the mail, and set timers for the lights. Everything neat and organized just as I liked it. As darkness fell, I found myself drawn to the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. I knelt beside it, my knees protesting, and lifted the heavy lid. Inside were the treasures of my life: Henry's love letters, the children's baby books, handmade, cards from students over the years. Near the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, lay my wedding album. I lifted it out carefully, the leather binding cracked with age. Henry and I had been married for 47 years before cancer took him. Not perfect years. We'd had our share of arguments and hard times, but faithful ones. He'd been there, present in ways my children no longer were. I traced his young face in our wedding photo, remembering how he'd squeezed my hand during the ceremony, whispering, "Forever, Ellie," when he thought no one could hear. Had he known then how quickly forever would pass? How the decades would blur together until suddenly I was 72 and standing at his grave, wondering how I'd live without him? But I had lived. I'd found a way forward, created a new routine, made peace with the silence of the house. I'd done what women have always done: adapted, endured, reinvented. Now it was time for another reinvention. I returned the album to the chest and closed the lid. Tomorrow, I would begin my 80th year not with regret for what was missing, but with anticipation for what might yet be. My phone rang just as I was preparing for bed. "James," the display read. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" "Mom, it's me." His voice had that clipped professional tone he used when he was multitasking. "Just checking in about tomorrow. We'll call you in the evening after Tyler's presentation, okay? Maybe FaceTime if the connection's good." "That would be nice," I said, though we both knew it might not happen. "How's Tyler doing? Nervous about tomorrow?" "He's fine. Been preparing for weeks." A pause, then, "Look, Mom, I'm sorry we can't be there tomorrow. It's just bad timing," I finished for him. "I understand, James. We'll make it up to you next weekend," he promised. "The whole family, together. It'll be better than trying to cram a celebration into the actual day." I thought of the ocean view suite waiting for me, the dinner reservation with Martha and Bill, the freedom of celebrating on my own terms. "Perhaps," I said non-committally. "We'll see how next weekend looks when it gets closer." He seemed not to notice my lack of enthusiasm. "Great. Well, I should go. Still have some emails to get through before bed. Happy birthday for tomorrow, Mom." "Thank you, James." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long moment, letting the conversation settle. Once, his half-hearted apology would have wounded me deeply. Now, it only reinforced that I was making the right choice. I finished my nighttime routine and slipped beneath the covers, setting my alarm for 7 the next morning. As I drifted toward sleep, I realized I felt lighter somehow, unburdened by expectations of what tomorrow should be. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, my birthday would be exactly what I wanted it to be. Morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day to turn 80. I woke before my alarm, feeling more rested than I had in weeks. Today was the day everything changed. Not because I was 80, but because I'd chosen to put myself first. I took my time getting ready, dressing in comfortable travel clothes and applying a touch of makeup. The face in the mirror showed every year I'd lived, laugh lines around. My eyes, softness along my jaw, silver hair where chestnut had once been. But there was something else there too, a brightness, an anticipation I hadn't seen in my own reflection for years. At 8 o'clock, Martha arrived with fresh pastries and the promised bottle of champagne. Behind her came Sarah from next door, carrying a bouquet of garden flowers and a small wrapped package. "Happy birthday, Ellie," Sarah exclaimed, giving me a warm hug. "I know you're heading out soon, but I wanted to catch you before you left." I invited them both in, touched by Sarah's thoughtfulness. At 45, she was much younger than Martha and me, but she'd become a dear friend since moving in 3 years ago. She'd often bring over extra portions of whatever she'd cooked, claiming she wasn't used to cooking for one yet after her divorce. I suspected it was her way of checking on me, but I appreciated the gesture nonetheless. "These are beautiful," I said, arranging the flowers in a vase while Martha opened the champagne. "From my garden," Sarah said. "And this," she handed me, "the package, is just a little something to take on your trip." Inside was a lovely journal bound in soft blue leather. "For your new adventures," the card read. "Happy 80th." "It's perfect," I told her, genuinely moved. "Thank you, Sarah." Martha handed around glasses of champagne, raising hers in a toast. "To Eleanor Thompson on her 80th birthday, finally doing what she wants instead of what everyone else expects. May it be the first of many such days." "Here, here," Sarah echoed, and we clinked glasses, the champagne fizzing merrily. As we sipped and chatted, I glanced around my kitchen, the heart of my home for 45 years. How many meals had I prepared here? How many homework assignments supervised at this table? How many tears dried, bandages applied, arguments mediated? And now, instead of hosting a dutiful family gathering where everyone would check their watches and make excuses to leave early, I was embarking on my own adventure. The realization filled me with both melancholy and exhilaration. "You look pensive," Martha observed. "Second thoughts?" I shook my head firmly. "Not at all. Just appreciating the journey that brought me here." "Well, speaking of journeys," Sarah said, checking her watch, "isn't your car coming at 9? "Indeed it is," Martha confirmed. "And it's 1:15 now. We should finish up." We drained our glasses, and I gathered my purse and the small carry-on I'd packed for the 3-day trip. Everything else was already in my suitcase by the door. "The plants are all set," Sarah assured me. "I'll come by every day to check on them and bring in any packages." "Thank you," I said, giving her another hug. "You're a godsend." A sleek black car pulled up outside precisely at 9 o'clock. The driver, a courteous young man named Miguel, loaded our luggage while Martha and I said our goodbyes to Sarah. "Enjoy every minute," she called as we pulled away from the curb. "You deserve it." The drive to Golden Horizons Resort took just under 3 hours, winding along the coastal highway with breathtaking views of the ocean. Martha and I chatted comfortably, pointing out particularly stunning vistas or interesting buildings along the way. "Bill's probably already there," Martha said as we turned onto the resort's long, palm-lined driveway. "He texted me he was leaving at dawn to do his bird-watching on the way." "You two text?" I asked, surprised. Martha grinned. "Of course. We've been coordinating your birthday surprises." "Surprises, plural?" I raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" "Definitely not," she assured me. "Just be prepared to actually enjoy your birthday for once." The resort exceeded even my highest expectations. Situated on a bluff overlooking the Pacific, the elegant Spanish-style buildings were surrounded by lush gardens and swaying palms. The main lobby featured soaring ceilings, comfortable seating areas, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the ocean view. As we checked in, the young woman at the front desk smiled warmly. "Mrs. Thompson? Happy birthday. We've upgraded you to our premium ocean suite as a birthday gift." "That's very kind," I said, pleasantly surprised. "Thank you." "Dr. Carter left this for you as well," she added, handing me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Bill. "Eleanor, I'm out watching sanderlings on the beach. Join me when you're settled? Look for the old fellow with the ridiculous hat. Happy birthday. Bill." I tucked the note into my purse, trying to ignore Martha's knowing smile. Our suite was even more beautiful than the photos in the brochure had suggested. A spacious living area opened onto a private terrace with unobstructed ocean views. 2 bedrooms with luxurious ensuite bathrooms offered plenty of space and privacy. Fresh flowers sat on the coffee table beside a bottle of wine and a note welcoming us to the resort. This, Martha declared, dropping onto one of the plush sofas, is exactly what 80 should look like. Not some rushed brunch with people checking their watches. I stepped onto the terrace, letting the sea breeze wash over me. Below, waves crashed against the rocky shore in a timeless rhythm. Seagulls wheeled overhead, their cries barely audible, over the sound of the surf. I'm going to change and find Bill, I decided. Would you like to come? Martha waved me off. I'm going to unpack and then check out that spa I read about. You two lovebirds enjoy your time. I'll see you at dinner. We're not lovebirds, I protested, though the thought sent a pleasant flutter through me. Not yet, Martha muttered with a smirk. I changed into comfortable slacks and a light sweater, accessorizing with a simple silver necklace Henry had given me for our 25th anniversary. A touch of lipstick, a spritz of perfume, and I was ready. As I made my way down to the beach, I felt a curious lightness in my step. Here I was, 80 years old today, embarking on a new adventure. No family obligations, no grandchildren to chase after, no carefully prepared meal that would be rushed through. Just the day stretching before me, full of possibilities. I spotted Bill right away, a tall figure in khaki pants and a blue shirt, wearing what was indeed a somewhat ridiculous wide-brimmed hat. He stood at the water's edge, binoculars raised, watching something in the distance. He turned as I approached, his face breaking into a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Eleanor, happy birthday!" He lowered the binoculars and took both my hands in his. "You look lovely." "Thank you," I said, suddenly feeling shy. "And thank you for the lovely note. I'm told you had something to do with our room upgrade as... Well?" He shrugged, looking pleased with himself. "I may have mentioned it was a special birthday when I made my reservation. How was the drive down?" "Beautiful," I replied, "though I suspect not as scenic as your bird-watching route." "I did see some magnificent gulls," he admitted, "and a peregrine falcon." He offered his arm. "Shall we walk? The tide's going out, and there's a lovely stretch of beach around that point." We strolled along the shoreline, occasionally pausing to examine an interesting shell or watch the sandpipers darting in and out of the waves. Bill told me about his morning bird sightings, his deep knowledge and enthusiasm making even the common seagull sound fascinating. "I never thought I'd become a bird watcher," he confessed. "But after Helen died and I retired, I needed something to fill the days. Birds are remarkable creatures, resilient, adaptable. They've taught me a lot about starting over." I nodded, understanding completely. That's how I felt about my garden after Henry passed. There's something healing about nurturing life, watching things grow and change. "Exactly," he agreed. "It's about finding new purpose, isn't it? New ways to engage with the world." "Yes," I said softly. "New purpose." We walked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of the waves a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. Here was a man who understood loss, who had rebuilt his life just as I had. Unlike my children, he didn't expect me to remain frozen in time, the eternally available mother and grandmother, unchanged by the years. "I have a confession," Bill said as we rounded the point. "I've been looking forward to this weekend for weeks, not just for your birthday celebration, but for the chance to spend time with you away from the community center and all its activities." I felt a blush creep up my neck. "I've been looking forward to it too," I admitted. He stopped walking and turned to face me. "Eleanor, at our age, I think we can dispense with games and pretense. I enjoy your company enormously. I would like to see where this might lead if you're amenable." His directness both startled and pleased me. After decades of marriage and then 8 years of widowhood, the prospect of a new relationship had seemed remote at best. Yet here was this kind, intelligent man, looking at me with such warmth in his eyes. "I would like that very much," I replied honestly. His smile was radiant. "Good. Now let's continue our walk. I believe there's a tidal pool around the next bend that's worth exploring." We spent the afternoon exploring the beach and the resort grounds, talking about everything and nothing, our children, our former careers, books we'd read, places we hoped to visit. When the sun began to dip lower in the sky, we made our way back to the main building. "I should go freshen up before dinner," I said as we reached the lobby. "Martha will be wondering where I am." "Of course," Bill agreed. "I'll see you both at 7 at the restaurant." As I turned to go, he caught my hand gently. "Eleanor?" "Yes?" "I'm very glad you decided to celebrate your birthday this way." "So am I," I replied, and I meant it with my whole heart. Back. In our suite, I found Martha lounging on the terrace with a glass of wine, looking utterly relaxed. "Well, well," she said, giving me a knowing look. "Someone had a nice afternoon. You're positively glowing." "It was lovely," I admitted, joining her. "Bill is... he's very special." "I told you so," she said with satisfaction. "Now, tell me everything while we get ready for dinner." As I shared the details of our afternoon, I realized how long it had been since I'd felt this way, this sense of anticipation, of possibilities opening before me. It had nothing to do with being 80 and everything to do with finally giving myself permission to seek joy. "He said he wants to see where this might lead," I concluded, selecting a necklace to wear with my blue dress. "And?" Martha prompted. "And I said I would like that too." She clapped her hands together. "Excellent! It's about time you had someone worthy of your attention, Ellie. Someone who actually makes time for you." Her words struck a chord, making me think of my children again. By now, they would have realized I wasn't home to receive their calls. James might have left a voicemail. Rebecca might have texted. Daniel would be worried if he'd tried to reach me and couldn't. For a moment, guilt began to creep in. The familiar weight of maternal responsibility. Should I have told them about my plans? Was I being deliberately petty by keeping this trip a secret? But then I remembered how easily they had all declined to celebrate my actual birthday with me. How they'd rescheduled my celebration around their convenience, not once asking what I might prefer. No, I decided. I wasn't being petty. I was finally recognizing my own worth. "You're right," I told Martha, pushing away the guilt. "It is about time." We dressed for dinner. I in my new blue dress that matched my eyes, Martha in a flowing, patterned caftan that suited her dramatic personality perfectly. As we put the finishing touches on our outfits, my phone buzzed with a text message. "Rebecca. Mom, tried calling. Where are you? Left a message at the house too. Call me when you get this." I showed the message to Martha, who snorted. "Letter? Wonder for once. Maybe it'll be good for her to realize you have a life beyond waiting for her calls." "Maybe so," I agreed, slipping the phone into my evening bag without replying. The resort's oceanfront restaurant was elegant without being stuffy, with panoramic windows showcasing the sunset over the Pacific. Bill was waiting for us at a prime table, standing as we approached. "Ladies, you both look magnificent," he said, helping us with our chairs. "And Eleanor, that color is perfect on you." Dinner was superb. Fresh seafood, excellent wine, and conversation that flowed effortlessly. As dessert arrived, a chocolate souffle with "Happy Birthday" written in elegant script on the plate, the restaurant's small ensemble began playing "Happy Birthday." To my surprise, several of the waitstaff joined in, followed by nearby diners. I felt my cheeks flush with pleasure as the entire restaurant sang to me. Bill and Martha beamed from across the table, clearly delighted by my embarrassment and joy. "Make a wish," Martha urged as they placed a single candle on my dessert. I closed my eyes, thinking carefully before blowing out the flame. I wished not for anything specific, but for the courage to continue choosing myself, my joy, my priorities, my life, even when it meant disappointing others. "Speech," called someone from a neighboring table, and soon others joined in. Bill raised his glass. To Eleanor, who at 80 is teaching us all how to live fully. I stood, touched by the warmth of these strangers. Thank you all for making this birthday so special. I've learned lately that life is too precious to wait for the perfect moment or for everyone's schedules to align. Sometimes you just have to create your own celebration. Applause rippled through the restaurant as I sat down, feeling both embarrassed and deeply pleased. "Well said," Martha approved, squeezing my hand. As we finished our desserts, my phone buzzed again, a call this time from James. I silenced it without answering. "Your children?" Bill asked, noticing my expression. "Yes," I admitted. "They're probably wondering where I am." "And they'll find out eventually," Martha said pragmatically. "But tonight is about you, not about managing their feelings." She was right. Tonight was mine. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. Perhaps difficult conversations with my children, perhaps their anger or hurt feelings. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I was exactly where I wanted to be, celebrating 80 years of life, on my own terms. And for now, that was more than enough. After dinner, Bill suggested a stroll along the resort's illuminated garden paths. The night air carried the scent of jasmine and salt from the ocean below, and string lights twinkled in the trees overhead. Martha, claiming fatigue from the day's travel, retreated to our suite with a knowing wink that made me feel like a teenager again. "It's not every day you turn 80, Bill said as we walked, his hand lightly touching the small of my back. "How does it feel so far?" I considered the question seriously. "Liberating," I finally answered. For most of my life, I've been defined by my relationships to others. Daughter, wife, mother, teacher. Today feels like the first day of being just Eleanor. "Just Eleanor is pretty wonderful," he said softly, stopping beneath a flowering magnolia tree. The moonlight filtered through the white blossoms, casting dappled shadows across his face. He was handsome in an understated way, with silver hair and laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived. In that moment, I felt a connection I hadn't experienced in many years, the quiet recognition of kindred spirits. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "A birthday gift." He handed me a small box wrapped in silver paper with a simple blue ribbon. "It's nothing elaborate," he added hastily. "Just something that made me think of you." I unwrapped it carefully, preserving the ribbon as was my habit. Inside the box, nestled in tissue paper, was a delicate silver pendant, a small bird in flight. "It's beautiful," I breathed, lifting it from the box. "It's a swallow," he explained. "They're remarkable birds. They migrate thousands of miles each year, always finding their way home. But they also adapt to new environments, build new nests when needed." He paused. "They reminded me of you. Resilient, determined, willing to fly toward new horizons." I was touched beyond words. This man, whom I'd known for just a few months, had seen something in me that my own children seemed to miss. My capacity for growth and change, even at 80. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Would you help me put it on?" He took the necklace and stepped behind me. His fingers were gentle as they fastened the clasp, brushing against the nape of my neck. I could feel his breath, warm and steady, and for a moment, we stood perfectly still in the garden, connected by more than just the silver chain. When I turned to face him, he was looking at me with such tenderness that my heart swelled. Without overthinking, I leaned forward and kissed him softly on the cheek. "That's the best birthday gift I've received in years," I told him truthfully. His smile in return was radiant. "The night's still young," he said, offering his arm once more. "Shall we continue our walk?" We strolled for another hour, talking about books we loved, places we'd traveled, the joys and sorrows that had shaped our lives. It felt wonderfully easy. No pretense, no careful editing of thoughts, just two people connecting in the moonlight. Eventually, the ocean breeze grew cooler, and I shivered slightly in my dress. "We should get you inside," Bill said, noticing immediately. "I don't want you catching cold on your birthday." He walked me back to my suite, pausing at the door. "I've had a wonderful evening, Eleanor." "So have I replied softly. "Would you like to join me for breakfast tomorrow? There's a lovely cafe on the lower terrace that faces the sunrise." "I'd like that very much." He hesitated, then leaned forward and kissed me lightly on the lips, a brief, gentle pressure that sent warmth spreading through my entire body. "Good night, Eleanor. Happy birthday." "Good night, Bill. Thank you for making it special." I entered the suite quietly, expecting Martha to be asleep. Instead, I found her on the sofa in her nightgown, reading glasses perched on her nose, engrossed in a novel. "Well, well," she said, looking up with a grin. "Someone had a good evening." I touched the swallow pendant at my throat. "It was lovely." "Details, please," she demanded, patting the space beside her. "I'm living vicariously through you." I laughed and joined her, recounting the gift and the kiss while she listened with evident delight. "I told you he was smitten," she said when I finished. "And it's about time you had someone appreciate you properly." Her words reminded me of my neglected phone. I pulled it from my evening bag to find 6 missed calls and a flurry of text messages. James, 8:15 p.m. "Mom, where are you? Called the house and got no answer. Starting to worry." Rebecca, 8:32 p.m. "Mom, please call when you get this. James says you're not picking up or at home." Daniel, 9:01 p.m. "Happy birthday, Mom. Tried calling but couldn't reach you. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Let us know you're okay when you can." Tyler, 9:17 p.m. "Happy B-Day, Grandma. Parents are freaking out BC they can't reach you. Hope are having fun wherever are." "They're in a panic," I said, showing Martha the messages. "Good," she replied firmly. "Let them stew a bit. Might make them think about how much they take you for granted." I considered her words. Part of me, the lifelong mother and caretaker, felt guilty for causing my children worry. But another part, the new Eleanor who had just spent a magical evening being appreciated for herself, felt a certain satisfaction. "I should at least let them know I'm safe," I said finally. Martha sighed dramatically. "If you must. But don't tell them where you are or who you're with. Let them wonder a bit longer." I composed a simple group text. "I'm perfectly fine. Celebrating. My birthday with friends. Will call tomorrow. Love, Mom." Almost immediately, my phone began to ring. James calling. I silenced it again. "They can wait until tomorrow," I said with newfound resolve. "Tonight is still my birthday." Martha raised her teacup in a toast. "Now you're getting it." We stayed up another hour, chatting about the day and our plans for tomorrow. The resort offered morning yoga on the beach, a guided nature walk, and various spa treatments. We decided to start with breakfast, Martha tactfully offering to find her own entertainment while I dined with Bill, and then perhaps try the nature walk together in the late morning. By the time I finally retired to my bedroom, it was nearly midnight. I performed my nighttime routine with special care, applying the expensive face cream Rebecca had given me for Christmas that I usually saved for special occasions. Tonight certainly qualified. As I slipped beneath the luxurious sheets, I realized I was smiling to myself. 80 years old, and here I was, feeling more alive and valued than I had in decades. The guilt about worrying my children had receded. replaced by a quiet certainty that I was finally doing what was right for me. I fell asleep with my hand resting on the silver swallow at my throat, dreaming of gardens and moonlight and new beginnings. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the gauzy curtains. For a moment, I was disoriented. The unfamiliar room, the sound of waves instead of neighborhood traffic. Then I remembered. I was 80 years old, at a beautiful resort, about to have breakfast with a man who kissed me goodnight. The realization made me laugh out loud. What would my children think if they could see me now? I dressed carefully in linen slacks and a flowing tunic top in sea glass green, accessorizing with my new swallow pendant. A light application of makeup, a spritz of perfume, and I was ready for the day. Martha was already on the terrace, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper. "Well, don't you look lovely this morning?" she observed. "Bill won't know what hit him." "Don't be ridiculous," I said, though I was pleased by the compliment. "I'm just dressed for a normal day." She hummed skeptically. "And the lipstick and perfume at 7:30 a.m. are also just for a normal day?" I laughed, caught out. "Fine, I made an effort. Is that so wrong?" "Not at all," she assured me. "It's wonderful. Now go enjoy your breakfast date. I'll meet you at the lobby at 10:30 for the nature walk." Bill was waiting at a corner table on the lower terrace, just as he'd promised. He stood as I approached, his face lighting up in a way that made my heart skip. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out my chair. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a dream," I replied. "This place is magical." We ordered coffee and pastries, then fresh fruit and eggs. The conversation flowed easily between us, punctuated by comfortable silences as we admired the view of the ocean stretching to the horizon. "I've been thinking," Bill said as we lingered over second cups of coffee. "After our nature walk this morning, would you like to drive up the coast a bit? There's a lighthouse about 20 miles north that offers spectacular views. We could take a picnic lunch." The spontaneity of the suggestion delighted me. "That sounds wonderful. But what about Martha?" "Already cleared it with her," he admitted with a smile. "She said, and I quote, 'Take her for the whole day if you want. I've got a hot stone massage and a date with my novel.'" I laughed, not at all surprised. "Then yes, I'd love to." As we finished breakfast, my phone buzzed insistently in my purse. I'd been ignoring it all morning, but now I pulled it out to find multiple new messages. Rebecca, 7:04 a.m. "Mom, what do you mean you're with friends? What friends? Where are you?" James, 7:45 a.m. "This isn't like you, Mom." "Very worried. If we don't hear from you by noon, I'm driving over to check the house." Daniel, 8:10 a.m. "Mom, please call one of us. We're concerned." I sighed, showing the messages to Bill. I should probably call them before they send out a search party. He nodded understandingly. "Of course. Take your time. I'll settle the bill and meet you in the lobby when you're ready." I found a quiet corner in one of the resort's garden alcoves and called Daniel first. He had always been the most reasonable of my children. "Mom," he answered on the first ring. "Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm perfectly fine, Daniel," I said calmly. "I'm celebrating my birthday with friends." "What friends? Not Martha? Are you at her place?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, Martha is with me. And no, we're not at her house." "Then where?" "We're at Golden Horizons Resort on the coast," I said, deciding to be direct. "We're here for a few days to celebrate my birthday properly." A long pause. "The resort? That place costs a fortune. And you just went? Without telling anyone?" "Yes," I said simply. "I made the decision after all three of my children informed me they were too busy to celebrate my 80th birthday with me." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You've never done anything like this before?" No, I haven't, I agreed. But perhaps I should have long ago. We were worried sick, he said, a hint of accusation in his tone. James was about to drive to your house. Rebecca called the neighbors. I'm sorry you were worried, I said sincerely. That wasn't my intention. But I'm an adult, Daniel. I don't need permission to take a trip. Of course not. It's just… He trailed off, then tried again. It's so unlike you. You've always been home, always available. And there it was, the crux of the matter. I had always been available, waiting patiently for whatever scraps of time my children could spare. Until now. I'm still your mother, I said gently. I still love you all very much, but I'm also Eleanor Thompson, a woman with her own life to live. I understand, he said, though his tone suggested he didn't, not really. How long will you be gone? We'll return on Sunday. I'll call you then. Okay. He hesitated. Happy birthday, Mom. I hope you're having a good time. The best, I assured him. Talk to you soon, dear. After hanging up, I sat for a moment in the garden, letting the conversation settle. It had gone better than I'd feared, but not as well as I'd hoped. Daniel, at least, had tried to understand. James and Rebecca might be more difficult. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone rang again. Rebecca. I took another deep breath and answered. Hello, dear. Mom! Her voice was sharp with frustration. Daniel says you're at some resort? With Martha? What were you thinking, not telling us? I was thinking that I wanted to enjoy my 80th birthday, I replied evenly. Since none of my children could make time to celebrate with me, I made other arrangements. That's not fair, she protested. We explained why we couldn't make it on the actual day. We were planning a family celebration for next weekend. At your convenience. Not mine, I pointed out. Did anyone ask me what I wanted for my 80th birthday? Silence on the line. That's what I thought, I continued. For once, I decided to put myself first. Is that really so terrible? No, but… She sighed heavily. You could have told us. Would you have approved? That's beside the point. Is it? I asked quietly. Because it seems to me that's exactly the point. I'm 80 years old, Rebecca. I don't need my children's approval to live my life. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice softer. I was worried, Mom. When we couldn't reach you. I'm sorry for worrying you, I said, meaning it. That wasn't my intention. But I'm having a wonderful time and I'll be home on Sunday. Fine, she said, clearly still upset but making an effort to control it. Enjoy your trip. We'll talk when you get back. I look forward to it, I replied. Give my love to everyone. After we hung up, I checked the time. Nearly 10 o'clock. I needed to meet Bill and Martha soon for the nature walk. But first, I had one more call to make. James answered on the wee-eye. Second ring, his voice tight with concern. Mom? Where are you? Daniel said something about a resort? I explained again, keeping my voice calm and matter-of-fact. His reaction was the most severe of the three. This is completely irresponsible, he said, sounding more like a parent than a son. You should have told us where you were going. What? If something had happened. Like what? I asked. I'm with friends. I'm in excellent health. I'm at a reputable resort with full staff and medical facilities if needed. That's not the point, he insisted. The point is, you left without telling anyone. It's selfish and thoughtless. The words stung, but I refused to be cowed. Is it selfish and thoughtless when you take business trips without consulting me? When you changed plans for my birthday to accommodate Tyler's presentation? When you've canceled visits with minimal notice due to work commitments? That's different, he sputtered. Is it? How? He didn't have an immediate answer for that. Look, Mom, I understand you were upset about your birthday. I wasn't upset, I interrupted. I was disappointed, certainly. But mostly, I realized that I needed to start prioritizing my own happiness rather than waiting for others to do it for me. "And what's that supposed to mean?" he demanded. "It means I'm having a wonderful time." "At this beautiful resort with people who chose to spend my birthday with me?" I said firmly. "It means I'm going on a coastal drive today to see a lighthouse I've always wanted to visit. And it means I'll see you all when I return on Sunday. At which point we can discuss this further if you wish." "This isn't over," he warned. "I wouldn't expect it to be," I replied. "Goodbye, James. Give Tyler my love." I ended the call feeling both drained and oddly empowered. For perhaps the first time in my relationship with my children, I had set a boundary and held firm. It wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. When I reached the lobby, Bill and Martha were waiting, deep in conversation. They looked up as I approached, both noting my expression. "Children trouble?" Martha guessed. "Just the usual," I sighed. "They're upset I didn't tell them where I was going." "Did you explain why?" Bill asked gently. I tried. Daniel seemed to understand, at least a little. Rebecca was hurt. James was. I searched for the right word. Authoritarian. Martha snorted. "Of course he was. That boy has always thought he runs the world." Despite my tension, I smiled. "He means well." "They all do," Bill observed. "But meaning well doesn't excuse taking you for granted." "Exactly," Martha agreed. "Now, are we ready for this nature walk? The guide is waiting." The nature walk proved to be exactly what I needed to restore my spirits. Our guide, a young woman named Olivia with an encyclopedic knowledge of coastal ecology, led us along well-maintained trails that wound through native gardens and natural areas. She pointed out interesting plants, birds, and even a family of rabbits hiding among the brush. "The resort sits on what was once native Chumash land," she explained, as we paused at a viewpoint overlooking the ocean. The Chumash believed this. Coastline was sacred, a place where the earthly and spiritual worlds connected. I could believe it. Standing there with the breeze in my hair, watching waves crash against the cliffs below, I felt more connected to something larger than myself than I had in years. The tour ended back at the main building, where Martha excused herself for her spa appointment. "Have fun at the lighthouse," she said with a wink. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." "That doesn't rule out much," I teased, giving her a quick hug. Bill had arranged for a picnic lunch from the resort's restaurant, a wicker basket containing gourmet sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese, and a bottle of crisp white wine. His car, a well-maintained older model Volvo, was spotlessly clean and comfortable. "My children think I've lost my mind," I told him as we drove north along the coastal highway. Taking off without telling them, staying at an expensive resort, going on a drive with a man they've never met. He chuckled. "Sounds perfectly reasonable to me. You're 80, not 8. You don't need a permission slip." "That's what I told them," I said, smiling, though not in those exact words. "How did they take it?" "About as well as you'd expect." I gazed out at the ocean stretching alongside the highway. They've never seen this side of me. I'm not sure they know how to process it. "And how do you feel about that?" he asked, glancing over briefly. I considered the question seriously. "Liberated," I said finally. "A bit guilty for worrying. Them, but mostly free. Like I've finally given myself permission to be more than just their mother." He reached over and squeezed my hand briefly. "Good. It's about time." The lighthouse stood on a rocky promontory jutting into the Pacific, its white tower gleaming in the midday sun. We parked in a small lot and followed a path that wound through wind-sculpted cypress trees to a grassy area with picnic tables overlooking the ocean. "It's magnificent," I breathed, taking in the sweeping views of coastline in both directions. "Worth the drive?" Bill asked, setting down our picnic basket. "Absolutely." We settled at a table sheltered from the wind by a low stone wall and unpacked our lunch. The wine was perfect with the gourmet sandwiches, and the fruit tasted sweeter somehow with the salt air mixing with each bite. I've lived within a few hours of this place my entire life, I mused, and never once visited. How is that possible? Bill nodded understandingly. Life gets busy. We put things off, thinking there will always be time later. And then suddenly you're 80, I said with a small laugh. With hopefully many more good years ahead, he added, raising his plastic wine glass and a toast. To new experiences. To new experiences, I echoed, clinking my glass against his. After lunch, we climbed the lighthouse's spiral staircase to the observation deck. The view was even more spectacular from above. Miles of coastline stretching. North and south, the vast Pacific extending to the horizon, and even a pod of dolphins visible in the distance. I'm glad I lived long enough to see this, I said softly. Bill moved closer, his arm brushing against mine on the railing. I'm glad you did too. We stood side by side, watching the ocean in comfortable silence. The moment felt significant. Somehow, a marker between what had been and what might yet be. Here I was, 80 years old, standing atop a lighthouse I'd never bothered to visit before, with a man I'd known only a few months, but who seemed to understand me better than people I'd known for decades. Thank you for suggesting this, I said, turning to face him. Thank you for saying yes, he replied. His eyes, blue as the ocean behind him, held mine with warmth and something like wonder. You know, Eleanor, I've met many people in my 76 years, but never anyone quite like you. Is that a compliment? I asked, smiling. The highest, he assured me. Then, with gentle deliberation, he leaned forward and kissed me. Not the brief goodnight kiss of yesterday, but something deeper, more certain. When we parted, I felt a flush creep up my neck that had nothing to do with the climb up the lighthouse stairs. Well, I said, slightly breathless. That was worth waiting 80 years for. He laughed, the sound carried away by the ocean breeze. I certainly hope not. I intend to do much better with practice. We descended the lighthouse hand in hand, stopping in the small museum at its base to learn about the history of the structure and the keepers who had once maintained the light. It was nearly 4 o'clock by the time we returned to the car. We should head back, Bill said reluctantly. We don't want to miss our dinner reservation. What dinner reservation? I asked, puzzled. I thought we were joining Martha at the resort restaurant again. He looked suddenly secretive. That was the original plan, but Martha and I might have arranged a small surprise. Another surprise? You two are becoming quite the conspiracy. You'll just have to wait and see, he said with a grin, starting the car. The drive back to the resort was just as scenic as the journey out, with the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the landscape. We chatted easily about the day, the lighthouse, our childhoods growing up in a California that had long since vanished beneath progress and development. I grew up in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, I reminisced. Doors were left unlocked, children played freely until dark. My own children had a more structured upbringing, playdates and organized activities, and my grandchildren are scheduled within an inch of their lives. Progress, Bill said wryly, though I'm not convinced it's all for the better. Nor am I? I agreed, though I wouldn't trade modern medicine for anything. Without it, I might not have made it to 80. And what a loss that would have been, he said softly, glancing over with a smile that warmed me to my core. Back at the resort, Bill walked me to my suite door. Dinner is at 7, he said. Martha knows the details. Should I be nervous about this surprise? I asked. Not at all, he assured me. Just dress for a special evening. With a quick kiss on my cheek, he departed, leaving me both curious and excited about whatever the evening might hold. Inside the suite, I found Martha sprawled on the sofa, looking thoroughly relaxed after her spa treatments. So? She demanded as soon as I entered. How was the lighthouse? And more importantly, how was Bill? I couldn't suppress my smile. Both were wonderful. He kissed me at the top of the lighthouse. She sat up, clapping her hands in delight. I knew it. And? Was it good? Martha! I protested, feeling my cheeks warm. That's private. Which means yes, she said smugly. Good for you, Ellie. Now, we need to get ready for tonight. I've laid out your options on your bed. In my bedroom, I found 2 dresses spread across the bed, a deep purple one I'd packed and another in midnight blue that I definitely had not. Where did this come from? I called to Martha. She appeared in the doorway, looking pleased with herself. I may have done a bit of shopping before we left. Think of it as a birthday gift. The midnight blue dress was beautiful, simple but elegant, with a flattering drape and 3/4 sleeves that would hide the parts of my arms I'd grown self-conscious about. It looked expensive. Martha, you shouldn't have, I began. She waved away my protest. Nonsense. If not for your 80th birthday, then when? Try it on. If you hate it, wear the purple one. I didn't hate it. In fact, when I slipped it on, I loved how it fell gracefully from my shoulders, skimming over the areas that had thickened with age while highlighting what remained of my once slim waist. The color made my eyes look brighter, and the hemline hit perfectly at mid-calf. Oh my, Martha breathed when I emerged from the bedroom. You're going to knock his socks off. It's beautiful, I said sincerely. Thank you. She beamed, clearly, delighted with her success. My pleasure. Now sit. Let me do something with your hair. I submitted to her ministrations as she styled my silver hair into a more elegant version of my usual bob, then added subtle makeup that somehow managed to minimize the age spots I'd grown used to seeing in the mirror. There, she said finally, holding up a hand mirror. Take a look. The woman who gazed back at me wasn't young. The years showed clearly in the lines around her eyes and mouth, the softness beneath her chin. But she was unmistakably elegant, with a sparkle in her eyes and a certain dignity in the set of her shoulders. I look beautiful, Martha finished for me. You look beautiful, Ellie. Not bad for 80, I laughed, touched by her efforts and the results. Not bad at all. At 6:45, Martha, dressed in a flowing teal ensemble that suited her flamboyant personality, led me down to the lobby, where Bill waited in a dark suit and tie. His face when he saw me was worth every moment of Martha's fussing. Eleanor, he said, his voice soft with admiration. You're absolutely stunning. Thank you, I replied, feeling suddenly shy. You look very handsome yourself. He offered his arm, and Martha gave me a little push forward. You two go ahead, she said. I'll catch up. Aren't you coming with us? I asked, confused. She shook her head, grinning. Not right away. This part of the evening is just for you. Before I could question further, Bill was guiding me not toward the main restaurant, but to a small side entrance that led to a path illuminated with twinkling lights. The path wound through the resort's gardens, eventually opening onto a secluded terrace overlooking the ocean. There, set with fine china and crystal, surrounded by softly glowing lanterns, was a single table for 2. What is this? I asked, amazed. A private dinner, Bill explained, leading me to the table. Just for us, to celebrate your birthday? Properly. A waiter appeared as if by magic, holding a bottle of champagne. Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Carter, welcome. May I pour you some champagne to begin your evening? I nodded, speechless with surprise and pleasure. As the waiter filled our glasses, I took in the exquisite setting, the ocean view, the floral arrangements, the personal touches that spoke of careful planning. How did you arrange all this? I asked once the waiter had departed. Bill smiled, looking pleased with himself. Martha helped. She contacted the resort last week while you were at your garden club meeting. You two are quite the team, I observed, touched beyond words. We have a common interest, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Your happiness. We clinked glasses in a toast, and as the sun began to set over the Pacific, casting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for this beautiful moment, but for the courage that had brought me here. The decision to finally put myself first after decades of putting everyone else's needs before my own. Whatever came next with my children, with Bill, with the remaining years of my life, I knew I would face it with this new understanding. It was never too late to choose joy. The private dinner with Bill was exquisite. 5 courses of the chef's finest creations, each paired with a different wine. We dined by candlelight as stars emerged above the ocean, talking and laughing like people who had known each other for years rather than months. I haven't enjoyed an evening like this in a very long time, I admitted as we lingered over dessert, a delicate chocolate soufflé with raspberry coulis. Neither have I, Bill replied, his eyes holding mine across the table. There's something about you, Eleanor. You have this quiet strength that draws people in. I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, unaccustomed to such direct compliments. I don't feel particularly strong sometimes, especially when it comes to my children. And yet, you stood your ground today, he pointed out. You didn't let them make you feel guilty for living your life. I tried, I said. Though I suspect the real test will come when I return home. He reached across the table and took my hand. Whatever happens, remember this feeling. Remember that you deserve joy and respect, not just gratitude for being available whenever they need you. His words resonated deeply, articulating what I'd been feeling but struggling to express. For decades, I'd measured my worth as a mother by my availability, my willingness to set aside my own desires in favor of my children's needs. The idea that I deserved more, deserved joy and respect on my own terms, still felt revolutionary. Thank you, I said softly, squeezing his hand. For this evening, for today, for seeing me as more than just someone's mother or grandmother. I see you very clearly, Eleanor, he replied, his voice warm. That's why He stopped, looking, suddenly uncertain. Why you what? I prompted gently. He smiled, a touch of vulnerability in his eyes. Perhaps that's a conversation for another time. Tonight is for celebrating you. Before I could press further, Martha appeared at the entrance to the terrace, guided by a waiter. She was carrying a small, elegantly wrapped package. Am I interrupting? She asked with a knowing smile. Not at all, Bill assured her, though I caught a glint of regret in his eyes. Join us for dessert? Martha settled into a chair the waiter quickly provided. I've already had dinner, but I wouldn't say no to a bite of that soufflé. She handed me the package. One more birthday gift for my oldest friend. I unwrapped it carefully to find a leather-bound journal, similar to the one Sarah had given me, but in a rich burgundy. Inside, Martha had written an inscription. To Eleanor, may your new adventures fill these pages and your heart. Love always, Martha. It's beautiful, I said, deeply touched. Thank you. I thought you could use it to document this new chapter, she explained. Your liberation tour, as it were. I laughed at her characterization. Is that what this is? Isn't it? She challenged with an arched eyebrow. You've thrown off the shackles of expectations. You're living on your own terms for perhaps the first time since you married Henry. If that's not liberation, I don't know what is. Bill raised his wine glass. To Eleanor's liberation, may it be long and joyful. We clinked glasses, and as we did, my phone buzzed in my evening bag. I ignored it. One of the children again? Martha guessed. I nodded, not bothering to check. They'll survive one weekend without me being at their beck and call. Look at you, she said with approval. The old Eleanor would have jumped to answer, no matter how inconvenient. The old Eleanor is on vacation, I replied with more confidence than I truly felt, along with her guilt complex. We finished our dessert and lingered over coffee as the night grew deeper around us. The air was cool but pleasant, the sound of waves crashing on the shore below a soothing backdrop to our conversation. Eventually, Martha declared herself exhausted and headed back to the suite, leaving Bill and me alone once more on the terrace. Walk with me on the beach? He suggested. The moon is full tonight. I hesitated, glancing at my elegant dress and heeled sandals. I'm not exactly dressed for sand. We'll stay on the paved walkway, he promised, just to the viewing platform and back. The night was too beautiful to resist. We strolled arm in arm down the illuminated path that led from the resort to a wooden platform overlooking the beach. The moonlight cast a silver path across the water, and the sound of waves provided a rhythmic counterpoint to our footsteps. I've been thinking, Bill said as we paused at the railing, about what happens after this weekend. My heart quickened slightly. Oh? I'd like to see more of you, Eleanor. Back in Oak Ridge, I mean. He turned to face me, his expression serious in the moonlight. I've enjoyed our time at the community center, but this weekend has shown me just how much I enjoy your company, away from shuffleboard and bingo. I smiled at his reference to the center's somewhat limited activities. I've enjoyed your company too, Bill. Very much. So perhaps we could have dinner next week? Or visit that art exhibit you mentioned at the museum? He seemed almost shy, this confident man who had swept me off to a lighthouse just that morning. I'd like that, I replied, my voice soft but sure. Very much. His smile in response was radiant. He stepped closer, one hand coming up to gently cup my cheek. May I kiss you goodnight, Eleanor? In answer, I leaned forward, closing the distance between us. This kiss was unhurried, tender, full of promise. When we finally parted, I felt breathless in a way that had nothing to do with my age. Definitely worth the wait, Bill murmured, his forehead resting against mine. We walked back to the resort in comfortable silence, his arm around my waist, my head occasionally resting against his shoulder. At my suite door, he kissed me once more, briefly but with unmistakable affection. Sleep well, birthday girl, he said. I'll see you at breakfast. Inside the suite, the lights were dimmed. Martha had apparently retired to her bedroom. I moved quietly through the living area, not wanting to disturb her, but paused when I heard a soft sound from the terrace. I found her there, wrapped in a robe, gazing out at the moonlit ocean with a glass of wine in hand. Not sleeping? I asked, joining her on the comfortable sofa. Waiting up for you, she admitted with a grin. How was your romantic moonlit walk? I laughed softly. Lovely. And yes, before you ask, we kissed goodnight. Good for you. She handed me her wine glass. Finish this. I've had enough. I took a sip, savoring the rich Merlot. He wants to continue seeing me after we go home. Of course he does, Martha said matter-of-factly. The man is smitten. Anyone with eyes can see it. Is it that obvious? Completely. And you're just as bad. She nudged my shoulder affectionately. It's nice to see you like this, Ellie. You're practically glowing. I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. It's all happened. So quickly. A month ago, I was just a lonely widow planning a birthday no one would attend. Now I'm having a romantic weekend with a handsome doctor who thinks I'm special. You've always been special, Martha said firmly. Some of us have known that all along. It just took you 80 years to believe it yourself. Her words settled over me like a blessing. Thank you, Martha. For everything. This weekend, the dress, 50 years of friendship. Don't get sentimental. On me now, she warned, though her voice was thick with emotion. Save it for your journal. I laughed and squeezed her hand. Fine, but know that I'm thinking it. I know. She stood and stretched. Now I really am going to bed. Don't stay up too late mooning over your doctor. After she left, I remained on the terrace for a while longer, listening to the waves and reflecting on the extraordinary turn. My life had taken in just a few short days. I thought of Bill's warm eyes, the tenderness of his kiss, the respect with which he treated me. I thought of Martha's unwavering friendship and encouragement. And I thought of my children, who would be waiting when I returned home, perhaps angry, perhaps hurt, certainly confused by this unexpected display of independence. I would face that challenge when it came. For now, I wanted to savor this moment. The beauty of the night, the lingering taste of wine, the memory of a perfect day. Eventually, I too went to bed, falling asleep almost instantly to the distant sound of waves. Saturday dawned clear and mild, another perfect June day on the coast. I woke feeling refreshed and oddly youthful despite my 80 years. A glance at my phone showed several missed calls and texts from the previous evening. 2 from Rebecca, 1 from James, and surprisingly, 1 from my granddaughter Emma. I opened Emma's text first. Happy belated B-Day, Grandma. Mom's freaking out that you're at some resort, but I think it's awesome. Live your best life. Send pics. Love you. Her message brought a smile to my face. Emma, at 19, was the most free-spirited of my grandchildren. She'd always marched to her own drummer, much to Rebecca's occasional frustration. It seemed I had at least one ally in the family. I replied quickly, "Thank you, sweet girl. Having a wonderful time. We'll share pictures when I return. Love you too." I left the other messages for later. This morning was for enjoying the final full day of my birthday retreat. After a quick shower, I dressed in casual slacks and a light sweater for breakfast. Martha was already up, reading on the terrace with a cup of coffee. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," she greeted me. "I've been up for hours." "It's barely 8:30, I protested. "Like I said, hours." She closed her book. "Ready for breakfast? Your gentleman caller texted to say he's waiting in the cafe." I felt a flutter of anticipation at the prospect of seeing Bill. "Let me just fix my hair." "It's perfect," she assured me. "Stop fussing and go enjoy your breakfast date. I'll join you in a bit." Bill was indeed waiting, looking handsome in casual trousers and a light blue shirt that matched his eyes. He stood as I approached, his face lighting up in a way that made my heart skip. "Good morning," he said, pulling out my chair. "You look lovely and well-rested." "I slept better than I have in years," I admitted. "Must be the sea air." "Or good company," he suggested with a smile. We ordered breakfast, French toast for me, an omelet for Bill, and spent a relaxed hour enjoying the food and conversation. Martha joined us eventually, bringing my new journal. "Since you'll likely have experiences worth recording today," she said, placing it beside my coffee cup. "What's on the agenda?" I asked, curious about what they might have planned. "Well," Bill began, glancing at Martha, "we thought we'd let you decide. The resort offers a painting class this morning, or there's a guided tide pool exploration. Or if you prefer, we could just relax by the pool." The thought of a day with no obligations, no one else's schedule to accommodate, was still novel, enough to give me pause. What did I want to do? The tide pools sound interesting, I decided. I've always loved seeing the little ecosystems hidden there. "Tide pools it is," Martha declared. Though I might skip that in favor of reading my novel by the pool. These old knees aren't what they used to be for climbing over rocks. After breakfast, I returned to the suite to change into more appropriate footwear for the excursion. As I was lacing up my walking shoes, my phone rang. James again. With a sigh, I answered, Good morning, James. Mom. His voice was clipped, controlled. We need to talk about this situation. What situation? I asked, though I knew perfectly well what he meant. This getaway of yours, running off without telling anyone, staying at an expensive resort. It's not like you. I sat on the edge of the bed, mentally preparing for the conversation. Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think, James. What's that supposed to mean? His tone sharpened. It means I'm more than just your mother. I'm a person with my own wants and needs. And right now, what I want and need is to enjoy the final day of my birthday trip without being made to feel guilty about it. A long pause. Mom, we're worried about you. This behavior is completely out of character. First, you miss your medication. What medication? I interrupted, confused. Your blood pressure pills. Rebecca said you left them on the kitchen counter when she stopped by your house yesterday. I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. James, I don't take blood pressure medication. I never have. My pressure has always been excellent. But Rebecca said. Rebecca was mistaken, I said firmly. Or perhaps she saw some other medication. The point is, I'm perfectly fine. I'm having a wonderful time and I'll be home tomorrow as planned. Another pause. Who are you with? Daniel mentioned someone named Bill? The question carried an unmistakable note of suspicion. Yes, Bill Carter. He's a friend from the community center. A retired doctor, as a matter of fact. He and Martha organized this weekend as a birthday surprise. A doctor. James's voice was flat. And how long have you known this friend? I felt a flare of indignation at his tone. Long enough to know he's a gentleman who treats me with respect and consideration. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans for the day. Mom, wait. I'll call you tomorrow when I get home, I said, cutting him off. Goodbye, James. I ended the call, my hand trembling slightly with a mixture of anger and residual guilt. How dare he question my judgment? I was 80, not 8. And yet a lifetime of putting my children's feelings first made it hard to dismiss his concerns entirely. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This weekend was about me, about claiming my right to joy and independence. I wouldn't let James's disapproval tarnish that. A knock at the bedroom door pulled me from my thoughts. Ellie? Martha called. Are you ready? Bill's waiting in the lobby. Coming, I replied, pushing thoughts of James aside. Today was still mine to enjoy. The tide pool excursion proved to be fascinating. Our guide, a marine biology student, named Max, led a small group of us along a stretch of rocky coastline inaccessible to casual visitors. He pointed out colorful sea anemones, scuttling hermit crabs, starfish clinging to the rocks, and even a small octopus that had taken refuge. In a deeper pool, Bill stayed close by my side throughout, offering his hand when the terrain grew uneven, listening intently as Max shared his knowledge of marine ecosystems. We lingered behind the group at several points, taking time to truly observe the intricate life in each pool. It's remarkable, isn't it? Bill mused as we watched a tiny crab navigate around a sea urchin. All these complex lives unfolding just beneath the surface, most people walking by without ever noticing. Like people themselves, I observed. We all have so much going on beneath the surface that others never see. He glanced at me, his eyes thoughtful. Is that how you feel, Eleanor? That your children don't see beneath your surface? The question caught me off guard with its perception. Sometimes, I admitted, they see mom or grandma, roles I'm happy to fill. But they don't always see Eleanor. I see Eleanor, he said simply, his hand finding mine. And she's extraordinary. The warmth of his words stayed with me throughout the excursion, a counterbalance to the lingering unease from James's call. By the time we returned to the resort for lunch, I had fully reclaimed my good spirits. We found Martha by the pool, deeply engrossed in her novel. She joined us for lunch at the casual poolside cafe, where we shared stories from the tide pools, and she regaled us with gossip overheard from nearby sunbathers. "That couple over there," she whispered, nodding toward a pair of middle-aged sunbathers, "are having an affair, both married to other people. They check in separately and meet." "Here, Martha!" I exclaimed. "You can't possibly know that." She looked smug. "They were discussing their cover stories quite openly while you were gone. She told her husband she's at a spa retreat with girlfriends. He told his wife he's on a fishing trip." Bill chuckled. "Remind me never to discuss private matters around you, Martha. You miss nothing." "A skill developed over decades of teaching high school English," she replied. "Teenagers think adults are deaf as well as stupid. You learn to listen between the lines." After lunch, Bill excused himself for a few hours. "I have some arrangements to make for this evening," he explained. "Our last night should be special." Once he'd gone, Martha and I decided to indulge in side-by-side pedicures at the resort spa. As we sat in plush chairs with our feet in warm, bubbling water, she gave me a sidelong look. "So, things with Bill seem to be going well." I couldn't suppress a smile. "Very well. It's rather stunning, actually. I wasn't looking for whatever this is." "Romance," she supplied. "You can say the word, Ellie. It won't cause a scandal." I laughed softly. "Fine. Romance. At 80. It seems almost absurd." "Why?" she challenged. "Because the young think they invented love? Because society says older women should be content with grandchildren and knitting circles?" "Maybe," I admitted. "Or maybe because I'd resigned myself to being alone after Henry died. I'd made my peace with it." Martha's expression softened. "Peace is one thing. Joy is another. You deserve both, my friend." The spa attendants began, the pedicures temporarily halting our conversation. I leaned back in the comfortable chair, letting myself truly relax. Martha was right. I had found a kind of peace in my widowhood, a quiet routine that had its own satisfactions. But this weekend had reawakened me to possibilities I'd thought were long past. When the pedicures were complete, we admired our freshly painted toes, coral pink for Martha, a more subdued rose for me. "Perfect for dancing," Martha declared. "Dancing?" I echoed. "Who said anything about dancing?" She looked suddenly evasive. "No one. Just a figure of speech." I narrowed my eyes. "Martha Jenkins, what are you and Bill planning for tonight?" "You'll find out soon enough," she replied with a mysterious smile. "For now, let's enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I hear they serve a lovely English tea in the garden at 4. We spent the next couple of hours wandering through the resort's extensive gardens, admiring the carefully tended roses, lavender, and native California plants. The afternoon was perfect. Warm sunshine tempered by a cool ocean breeze, the scent of flowers mingling with the salt air. At 4, we settled at a small table in a secluded corner of the garden for tea. Delicate sandwiches, scones with clotted cream and jam, and an assortment of pastries were served on tiered plates, accompanied by properly brewed tea in china cups. "This reminds me of that trip we took to England," Martha said, spreading jam on a scone. "Remember, summer of 85. I smiled at the memory. How could I forget? We got lost in the Cotswolds and ended up staying in that tiny village with the medieval church. And that handsome widower who owned the bed and breakfast took quite a shine to you," she added with a smirk. "He did not," I protested, though I remembered the gentleman's attentions. He was just being hospitable. Martha hummed skeptically. "If by hospitable you mean he found every excuse to show you around personally while I was left with his ancient mother." I laughed at her exaggerated grievance. Poor Martha, forced to endure tea and biscuits with a delightful old lady while I trudged up and down hills looking at historical markers. The sacrifices I've made for our friendship, she sighed dramatically. Then, more seriously, it was a good trip, though. One of our best. It was, I agreed. We should travel more. Often. Yes, we should. She buttered a triangle of cucumber sandwich. Life's too short to stay in one place, especially at our age. Her words resonated with me on multiple levels. It wasn't just about physical travel, but about moving forward in life, being willing to explore new territories, both external and internal. As we lingered over our tea, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected another message from one of my children, but instead found a note from Bill. Wear something nice for dancing tonight. I'll collect you at 7. I showed the message to Martha, who didn't seem at all surprised. Dancing? That's what you were hinting at earlier. What's happening tonight? She just smiled mysteriously. You'll see. And yes, wear that new blue dress again. It's perfect for what Bill has planned. Back in our suite, I showered and dressed, with particular care, applying makeup and styling my hair with more attention than usual. The blue dress looked just as flattering as it had the night before, and I added the silver swallow pendant Bill had given me. Martha, dressed in a flowing black ensemble with dramatic silver jewelry, nodded approvingly when I emerged from my bedroom. Perfect. Bill won't know what hit him. Are you going to tell me where we're going? I asked, securing a small silver earring. And ruin the surprise? Absolutely not. She checked her watch. He'll be here any minute. Ready for your final night of birthday celebrations? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Martha opened it to reveal Bill, handsome in a dark suit and tie, holding a small bouquet of white roses. For the birthday girl, he said, presenting them to me with a warm smile. Though technically, your birthday celebrations should be over by now. Nonsense, Martha declared. 80 years deserves at least a week of festivities? Bill offered an arm to each of us. In that case, shall we continue the festivities? Our destination awaits. He led us not to a car as I'd expected, but toward the main building of the resort. We entered through a side door and followed a corridor I hadn't explored before, finally stopping before a set of double doors marked Ocean View Ballroom. Ready? Bill asked, looking at me with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Before I could respond, he pushed open the doors to reveal a stunning ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the moonlit ocean. A small ensemble played, soft jazz in one corner, and several couples danced on the polished floor. Tables draped in white linen surrounded the dance area, each with flickering candles and fresh flowers. The resort hosts a dinner dance every Saturday, Bill explained. I thought it would be a nice way to end our weekend. It's perfect, I said, genuinely moved by his thoughtfulness. I haven't danced in years. Then we have some catching up to do, he replied, his eyes twinkling. We were shown to a table near the dance floor, where champagne was already waiting. After a toast to new beginnings, Bill extended his hand to me. May I have this dance, Eleanor? I hesitated only briefly before placing my hand in his. Fair warning, I'm rather out of practice. So am I, he admitted as he led me to the floor. But I suspect it's like riding a bicycle. You never really forget. He was right. As he took me in his arms and we began to move to the music, a smooth, romantic standard, the steps came back naturally. He was a good lead, confident without being overbearing, and we quickly found our rhythm together. You dance beautifully, he murmured as we glided across the floor. Another hidden talent. Hardly hidden, I replied with a smile. Henry and I used to dance often when we were younger. It was one of our favorite things to do together. He was a lucky man, Bill said softly. I was a lucky woman, I countered. We had a good marriage. Not perfect. No marriage is. But good. I paused, then added, I miss him still, you know. That never really goes away. Bill nodded, his expression understanding. Nor should it. Helen has been gone 12 years now, and I still find myself turning to tell her something interesting I've read or heard. He twirled me gently before continuing. But I've learned that loving someone who's gone doesn't mean you can't open your heart again. Yes, I agreed, feeling a deep resonance with his words. That's exactly it. We danced 2 more songs before returning to the table, where Martha sat in conversation with an elegant older gentleman. Ellie, Bill, this is George, she introduced us. George is visiting from San Francisco and was kind enough to keep me company while you two were dancing. George stood and shook our hands. Pleasure to meet you both. Martha tells me you're celebrating a birthday weekend? Eleanor just turned 80, Bill said with evident pride. George looked genuinely surprised. I would never have guessed. You're more radiant than many women half your age. I felt myself blush at the compliment. Thank you. I'm feeling particularly radiant this weekend. Special occasions will do. That, George observed, as will good company. He glanced at Martha with obvious appreciation. Would you mind terribly if I stole your friend for a dance? Martha looked pleased. I'd be delighted. As they moved to the dance floor, Bill and I watched with amusement. She never changes, I said fondly. Always making new friends. It's a gift, Bill agreed, though I'm more interested in deepening the friendships I already have. He took my hand across the table. This weekend has been extraordinary, Eleanor. I want you to know how much it's meant to me. It's meant a great deal to me, too, I replied softly. When we return home tomorrow, I hope this isn't the end, he continued, his eyes steady on mine. I hope it's just the beginning. The simple sincerity of his words touched me deeply. So do I, Bill. So do I. We rejoined Martha and George for dinner, a delicious 4-course meal punctuated by more dancing and lively conversation. George, it turned out, was a retired history professor with fascinating stories about his research travels. Martha was clearly enjoying his company, her face animated as they discovered common interests. Between courses, Bill led me back to the dance floor. As we swayed to a slow ballad, my head resting lightly against his shoulder, I felt a profound sense of contentment. Here I was, 80 years old, dancing in the arms of a man who saw me, really saw me, not as a mother or grandmother or widow, but as a woman with desires and dreams of her own. Penny for your thoughts, Bill murmured close to my ear. I was just thinking how unexpected life can be, I replied. A week ago, I was dreading my birthday, feeling invisible and overlooked. Now here I am, having the most wonderful weekend of my life. He pulled back slightly to look into my eyes. You should never feel invisible, Eleanor. You light up every room you enter. Before I could respond, he leaned forward and kissed me, right there on the dance floor. It was brief but tender, a promise of things to come. When the dance ended, we returned to find Martha alone at the table, looking pleased with herself. Where's George? I asked, noticing his absence. Gone to arrange drinks at the lobby bar, she explained. We'll join him after dinner for a nightcap. She gave me a significant look. Unless you two have other plans. Martha, I admonished, feeling myself blush again. Bill laughed. You're incorrigible, Martha, but we'd be happy to join you and George for a drink. The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant blur of dancing, conversation, and laughter. By the time we finally said goodnight to George and headed back to our respective rooms, it was well past midnight. At my suite door, Bill took both my hands in his. Thank you for a magical evening, Eleanor, for a magical weekend. Thank you for making it so, I replied. I've never had a birthday like this before. Good, he said with a smile. It's about time someone celebrated you properly. His kiss goodnight was lingering and sweet, full of promise for the future. When we parted, I felt a giddy warmth that belied my 80 years. Inside the suite, I found Martha already in her nightgown, making tea in the kitchenette. "Well?" she demanded as soon as I entered. "Was it a perfect evening or what?" "It was beyond perfect," I admitted, slipping off my shoes with a sigh of relief. "Bill he's extraordinary." "And so are you," she said firmly, handing me a cup of chamomile tea. "Which is why you deserve each other." We sat on the terrace, one last time, sipping our tea and listening to the ocean waves below. The moon hung low over the water, casting a silver path across the surface. "Thank you, Martha," I said finally, "for arranging all this, for pushing me to put myself first for once." "You're welcome," she replied simply. "But the hard part comes tomorrow, you know, going home and facing the children." I nodded, feeling a flicker of anxiety at the thought. "I know. They're not going to understand." "Probably not," she agreed. "At least not at first. But they'll adjust. They'll have to." "Yes," I said softly. "They will." As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about the conversation to come. James would be judgmental, Rebecca hurt, Daniel confused. They would want explanations, justifications for behavior they found inexplicable. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to provide those explanations. I was 80 years old. I had raised my children, supported their dreams, celebrated their successes, comforted them in their failures. I had done my duty and more. Now it was time to live for myself, not selfishly, but authentically. With this weekend, I had taken the first step on a new journey. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the knowledge that I deserved joy, respect, and love on my own terms. I fell asleep with that thought cradled in my heart, the sound of waves a gentle lullaby carrying me into dreams of dance, floors and moonlight and possibilities I had only just begun to explore. Sunday morning arrived with soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. I woke early, a mixture of contentment and reluctance coloring my mood. Our wonderful weekend was coming to an end, and real life, with all its complications, awaited, back in Oak Ridge. I dressed simply in slacks and a blouse, then began the task of packing my belongings. The blue dress Martha had given me was carefully folded between layers of tissue paper. The swallow pendant from Bill remained around my neck, a tangible reminder of the connection we'd formed. Martha emerged from her bedroom looking remarkably fresh for someone who had danced until midnight. "Last day," she said, a note of wistfulness in her voice. "How are you feeling?" "Mixed," I admitted, closing my suitcase. "I've had the most wonderful time, but you're worried about facing the Inquisition when we get home?" she finished for me. I nodded. "Exactly. James will be self-righteous, Rebecca hurt, and Daniel caught in the middle, as usual." "And how will you handle it?" Martha asked, watching me carefully. I considered the question, thinking about all that had transpired over the weekend. Not just my deepening relationship with Bill, but my own internal shift toward prioritizing my happiness. With honesty, I decided. I won't apologize for living my life, but I will explain. They deserve that much. Martha nodded approvingly. "Good girl. Now, shall we have one last breakfast with your doctor before we head home?" Bill was waiting, in the cafe reading a newspaper with a cup of coffee. He set it aside immediately when he saw us, standing to greet me with a gentle kiss on the cheek. "Good morning, ladies. Sleep well?" "Like a rock," Martha replied. "Dancing always tires me out in the best way." We settled at a table overlooking the ocean, ordering a final vacation breakfast. Belgian waffles with fresh berries for me, eggs, Benedict for Martha, and a hearty omelet for Bill. As we ate, the conversation turned inevitably to our departure. "The car service will be here at 11, Bill confirmed. "We should arrive back in Oak Ridge by mid-afternoon." And then reality intrudes. I sighed. He reached across the table and took my hand. Reality doesn't have to be unpleasant, Eleanor. This weekend wasn't a dream. It was a beginning. His words warmed me, easing some of my apprehension about what lay ahead. You're right. It's just my children. They'll adjust, Martha said firmly. They might pout for a while, but they're adults. They'll get over it. I hope so, I replied, though privately I wasn't so certain. My children had become accustomed to a mother who was always available, always accommodating. This new, independent Eleanor might take some getting used to. After breakfast, we took a final walk along the resort's beautiful grounds, stopping occasionally to admire a particularly lovely view or flowering plant. The morning was perfect, warm without being hot, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of salt and flowers. I'll miss this place, I admitted as we paused at a viewpoint overlooking the ocean. We can come back, Bill suggested. Perhaps for your 81st? The casual way he included himself in my future made my heart lighten. I'd like that. We returned to the lobby with just enough time to check out before the car arrived. As the porter loaded our luggage, I took one last look at the resort that had been the setting for such an unexpected transformation in my life. Thank you, I said softly to Martha and Bill, for giving me the birthday I needed, not just the one I thought I wanted. The drive back to Oak Ridge passed more quickly than I would have liked. We chatted comfortably, sharing favorite moments from the weekend and making tentative plans for the days ahead. Bill would call tomorrow to arrange dinner later in the week. Martha had already invited me to a concert at the community center on Wednesday. Life would go on, but differently now. Better. All too soon, familiar landmarks began to appear as we approached Oak Ridge. My neighborhood came into view, and with it, an unexpected sight. 3 cars parked in my driveway and along the street in front of my house. Oh dear, Martha murmured, recognizing them immediately. The welcome committee has assembled. My children had arrived ahead of us, clearly planning a reception of some kind. I felt a flicker of irritation at this invasion, followed by resignation. Best to face them directly and get it over with. The car pulled into my driveway behind, James's sleek sedan. As it came to a stop, the front door of my house opened, and Rebecca stepped onto the porch, arms crossed over her chest. Deep breath, Martha advised from beside me. Remember who you are now. Bill squeezed my hand. Would you like me to stay? I considered his offer, tempted to have his steadying presence beside me. But no, this confrontation with my children was something I needed to handle myself. Thank you, but I think it's better if I face them alone, I said. I'll call you later? Absolutely, he replied, then leaned over and kissed me softly. For courage, he whispered. The driver opened my door and I stepped out into the sunshine. Rebecca's expression tightened at the sight of Bill in the car, but she said nothing as I retrieved my suitcase from the trunk and thanked the driver. Martha emerged next, giving Rebecca a cheerful wave that was not returned. Good luck, she murmured to me. Call me after the dust settles. As Martha and Bill departed in the car, I turned to face my daughter. Hello, Rebecca. This is a surprise. Is it? Her voice was cool. We were worried about you. As I told you several times on the phone, there was no need to worry, I replied, keeping my tone even as I climbed the steps to the porch. I was perfectly fine. She followed me inside, where James and Daniel were waiting in the living room. James stood by the fireplace, his posture rigid with disapproval. Daniel sat on the sofa, looking uncomfortable but concerned. Welcome home, Mom, Daniel said, standing to give me a hug. Did you have a good time? The best, I replied sincerely, returning his embrace. The resort was beautiful. Who was that man? James demanded without preamble. The one in the Lai car. I set down my suitcase and turned to face him directly. That was Bill Carter, A retired doctor and a dear friend who, along with Martha, arranged my birthday celebration. A dear friend? James repeated skeptically. Since when? We met at the community center a few months ago, I replied, refusing to be intimidated by his tone. He's a widower, a former physician, and a kind, intelligent man who treats me with respect. And you just took off with him for the weekend without telling anyone? Rebecca interjected. Mom, that's not like you at all. Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think, I said quietly. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. I used the moment to study my children, James with his barely contained anger, Rebecca hurt and confused, Daniel caught between concern and curiosity. Look, I began, choosing my words carefully. I understand you were worried when you couldn't reach me. For that, I apologize. But I don't apologize for taking this trip or for choosing to celebrate my birthday in my own way. But why the secrecy? Daniel asked. Why not just tell us your plans? I sighed, moving to sit in my favorite armchair. Because I knew you would try to talk me out of it. Or worse, invite yourselves along out of guilt, which wasn't what I wanted. What's that supposed to mean? Rebecca demanded. It means, I said gently, that all three of you made it clear my actual birthday wasn't important enough to rearrange your schedules for, which is your right. But it's also my right to make other plans rather than sit at home alone. James made a dismissive sound. So this was some kind of punishment? To teach us a lesson? Not at all, I replied, keeping my voice steady. This was about me finally doing something for myself after decades of putting everyone else first. That's not fair, Mom, Rebecca protested. We offered to celebrate the weekend after. We all rearranged our schedules to be here today. Yes, at your convenience, I pointed out. Did any of you ask what I might prefer? Did anyone consider that my 80th birthday might be particularly meaningful to me, worth marking on the actual day? They exchanged uncomfortable glances, unable to deny the truth of my words. We've always celebrated birthdays when it worked for everyone's schedule, James said defensively. This isn't new. No, it isn't, I agreed. And I've never complained before. But 80 feels different. It made me realize how many celebrations and special moments I've let slide. How often I've accepted less than I deserved because it was easier than making waves. Daniel leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. I'm sorry, Mom. I hadn't thought of it that way. His simple apology loosened something in my chest. Thank you, Daniel. I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I just want you to understand that I'm changing. Or perhaps, more accurately, allowing myself to be who I've always been beneath the roles of mother and grandmother. And who is that exactly? James asked, his tone still skeptical. Someone who runs off with a strange man half the country away. My patience thinned. Bill is hardly a strange man, James. He's a respected member of the community. And for your information, we were 3 hours away, not half the country. Your exaggeration doesn't strengthen your argument. Rebecca sank onto the sofa, looking troubled. It's just, you've never done anything like this before. You've always told us where you were going. Always been. Predictable. Reliable, you mean, I corrected gently. Available whenever needed. She had the grace to look embarrassed. Well, yes. And I still am, I assured her. I'm still your mother. I still love you all deeply. But I'm also a woman with her own life to live, her own joy to pursue. Is that what this is about? James asked. Pursuing joy with some man you barely know? It's about pursuing joy, period, I replied firmly. Sometimes that involves Bill, sometimes Martha, sometimes simply doing things that make me happy, without consulting anyone else's schedule or preferences. Daniel, ever the peacemaker, intervened. I think what James is trying to say, poorly, is that we want to make sure you're okay. This behavior seems so out of character that we're concerned. I softened slightly. I appreciate the concern, I truly do. But I'm more than okay. I'm happier than I've been in years. Because of him? Rebecca asked, a hint of hurt in her voice. Not just because of Bill, I clarified. Because I've finally given myself permission to put my needs first sometimes. To say no when I want. To say no and yes when I want to say yes. A heavy silence fell over the room as my children absorbed my words. I waited, giving them time to process this new version of their mother, a woman with desires and boundaries they'd never had to navigate before. Finally, Daniel spoke. So, you and this Bill, are you? We're seeing where things lead, I replied simply. He's a good man who makes me happy. Beyond that, it's really not open for committee discussion. James made a frustrated sound and paced toward the window. I still don't understand why you couldn't just tell us where you were going. Do you have any idea how worried we were? I considered my response carefully. I didn't tell you because I needed this weekend to be entirely mine, not shaped by your opinions or expectations. I paused, then added more gently, and perhaps, subconsciously, I wanted you to experience for a few days what I've felt for years, the uncertainty of not being someone's priority. The words hung in the air, uncomfortable, but true. Rebecca looked stricken, Daniel thoughtful, and James, for once, speechless. That's not fair, Rebecca finally said, her voice small. Isn't it? I asked quietly. When was the last time any of you called just to chat? Not because you needed something or felt obligated. When did you last visit without checking your watch throughout? When did you last remember something important to me without being reminded? Tears welled in Rebecca's eyes. We've been busy, Mom. Work, kids, life. It's not that we don't care. I know you care, I assured her. But caring isn't the same as prioritizing. I've always understood that your lives are full and demanding. I've never expected to be your first priority. But somewhere along the way, I became your last. The one who would always understand. Always accommodate. Always be there whenever you found time. Daniel reached for my hand. I hadn't realized you felt that way. I'm sorry. His simple acknowledgement touched me deeply. Thank you. James turned from the window, his expression still troubled, but less hostile. So, what happens now? You'll be dating this doctor? At 80? I couldn't help but smile at his phrasing. Yes, James. At 80. Surprising as it may seem, life doesn't end at 60 or 70 or even 80. I still have dreams, desires, the capacity for joy and connection. And Bill makes you happy? Daniel asked. Very happy, I confirmed. As does taking control of my own life rather than waiting for scraps of attention from my busy children. Rebecca wiped away a tear. I don't want to be a scrap in your life, Mom. I want to do better. Her vulnerability melted some of my resolve. I would like that, I said gently. But it needs to be genuine, not motivated by guilt or fear that I'm slipping away. I can do that, she promised. Maybe. Maybe we could have lunch this week, just us? I'd love that, I agreed, smiling at her. Though it will need to be Thursday. I have plans Tuesday and Wednesday. Her eyebrows rose slightly at my suddenly full calendar, but she nodded. Thursday works. James remained by the window, still processing. I could see the struggle playing out across his face, the desire to maintain control warring with the realization that he no longer had any. James? I prompted gently. Thoughts? He sighed heavily. I still don't like how you handled this, Mom, but I suppose you're entitled to live your life however you choose. It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was progress. Thank you. That's all I'm asking for. The space to make my own choices, even if they're not the ones you would make for me. Daniel stood, sensing the conversation had reached its natural conclusion. We should probably go and let you rest. It sounds like you had quite a weekend. I rose as well, relieved the confrontation had gone better than I'd feared. Yes, but a wonderful one. Rebecca hugged me tightly. I really am sorry we missed your birthday, Mom. Next year will be different. I promise. I know, dear, I said, returning her embrace, and I appreciate that. But remember, it's not just about my birthday. It's about making space for each other in our lives consistently, not just on special occasions. She nodded, against my shoulder. I understand. I'll try harder. As my children prepared to leave, I felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Standing up for myself, setting boundaries, expressing needs, was new territory, but it felt right. Necessary. At the door, Daniel lingered after James and Rebecca had already stepped outside. Mom, he said quietly, I just want you to know. I'm happy for you. This new independence, even Bill, if he's good to you, then I'm glad. His simple acceptance brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Daniel. That means more than you know. After they'd gone, I stood in the quiet of my living room, absorbing the familiar surroundings that somehow looked different now. This was still my home, filled with memories and comforts accumulated over decades. But I was returning to it as a slightly different Eleanor, one who had claimed her right to joy, to independence, to being more than just someone's mother or grandmother. I unpacked slowly, hanging the blue dress carefully in my closet, placing the new journals on my bedside table. Each item was a tangible reminder of the weekend that had changed everything. When my phone rang, I knew without checking who it would be. Hello, Bill, I answered, smiling despite my fatigue. How did it go? He asked, concern evident in his voice. Better than expected, worse than hoped, I replied honestly. But we're working through it. I'm glad, he said. I've been thinking about you all afternoon. The simple admission warmed me. I've been thinking about you too. Would tomorrow be too soon to see you again? He asked, a touch of uncertainty in his voice that I found endearing. Not too soon at all, I assured him. I'd like that very much. We made plans for lunch at a cafe near the community center, then reluctantly said goodbye. As I set the phone down, I noticed the time, nearly 5 o'clock. Usually by now, I would have started preparing a solitary dinner, perhaps called one of the children afterward if I was feeling particularly lonely. Instead, I picked up the phone again and dialed Martha. The Inquisition is over, I told her, when she answered. And I survived. Never doubted you for a minute, she replied. What are you doing for dinner? Want company? Actually, I said, surprising myself, I think I'd like to try that new Thai place downtown. Care to join me? Eleanor Thompson, eating out on a Sunday night? She gasped in mock horror. Who are you and what have you done with my friend? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm the new and improved version. 80 years in the making. Well, I approve wholeheartedly, she declared. Pick you up in 30 minutes. After we hung up, I stood for a moment in the center of my quiet house, taking stock. For 8 years since Henry's death, I had lived according to established patterns, careful routines that filled my days predictably, if not always joyfully. Now, in the space of a long weekend, everything had shifted. I had kissed a kind man beneath the stars and danced in his arms. I had set boundaries with my children and stood my ground when challenged. I had chosen adventure over safety, risk over routine, joy over mere contentment. Change at 80 might seem improbable, even foolish to some. But as I went to change for dinner with Martha, I felt not foolish but liberated, a woman stepping into the fullness of herself not despite her age, but because of it. After all, 80 years had given me wisdom enough to know what mattered, and courage enough to claim it. Perhaps that was the greatest birthday gift of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.